of the things which normally people hesitate to discuss is about the faculty of an institution. However, every education institution, it is the people resources which really matter. And it is the faculty who make or break an institution's reputation. Of course, the students build a reputation later when they become alumni and they become important in their respective professions. But what really matters is the quality of the faculty members and how they build an institution. And I've had the experience to see faculty members, at NIFT, at NID, at Institute of Apparel Management, at ATDC, and other institutions abroad where I have interacted with hundreds of faculty members. There are people, who are able to, I remember Sky Morrison, for example, who used to come to NID, a faculty member who used to work abroad in the US and could manage hundreds of students and, their evaluations and their even going to pick them up from the airport to drop them. Every kind of work is done by a single individual and they manage a large number of students. And when it comes to India, it has been a very different mixed, set of experiences. In NID, for example, when I took over, I was 44 years old when I became director, and the institute had already, since it was set up in 1961, and in 2000 June, already more than 40 years have passed, and number of faculty members, senior faculty members are already 55, 56, 57, 58 kind of age group. And when I took over, I found that there was no connect between the student groups in some cases and the concerned faculty member who was the coordinator. So I made a statement telling that let us try to look at the youngest faculty member becoming the coordinator of the respective departments. This created a furor, telling that, in fact, I remember one of the senior most faculty members' wife in a social function jumping at me and telling that, how old are you, Dr. Koshy? I think it was Padmini Balram who asked me this question. I said, it's not about my age. It is not about Balram's age. It was about, how the students have to find a connect between their coordinator, immediate coordinator. I'm not telling that the faculty members should be old or young. What was important was the average age group of a postgraduate or undergraduate student and their coordinator should be as close as possible so that they can have a friend to talk to. And the faculty could be of any age because they are the people who are going to build their knowledge base. But in terms of talking to them on their problems, issues, scheduling, various matters which come in an academic life, that is better if the coordinator is of a younger profile. However, the storm was too much to handle in NID for quite some time, and we had almost completely revamped the coordinators of different programs at that point in time to make the students become closer to the coordinator to discuss their issues. And another point which I found was that the faculty are not always willing to understand the technological changes which are happening around. And it becomes very difficult because the students are millennials as of now when we speak, or are people who are very young and tech savvy. And the faculty members are still using slides to write their presentations, or they are not really savvy in looking at, the students are sitting in the class and Googling answers, and they are really not using any of the technology. So it becomes difficult because they are not willing to tell this to the management because they think that the appraisals which the supervisory faculty member or the heads of departments or the director later in the increments or departmental promotion committee, when you consider, that might become an impediment in the promotion. So they are not willing to discuss this with the management, that they are weak in English, or they are unable to understand a new technology, or they cannot use the 3D modeling system which is being introduced, or the new systems in the resource center for accessing an old archive. All these issues people were not able to, because you are looking at a profile where they are very hesitant to look at their own defects or their own frailties or their own issues of lack of knowledge in a certain area. It is nothing to be worried about, but it was a culture where people were not willing to discuss their issues. So we had to develop a program, a faculty development center, which was then conceived and put in place, where no questions were asked. Any faculty could go and say that, look, I don't know how to use the software, or I don't know how to use PowerPoint, I don't know how to write an email. Everything was welcome, and there was a group of people who we put together not to discuss it outside, but to discuss with only the concerned faculty and take remedial steps, including calling from outside experts to help them. So this sort of helped to bridge the gap in technology, knowledge base, and it went on to become a separate room near the Knowledge Management Center was allocated for this, and we had given the responsibility to a very senior faculty member to run this faculty development center. There was, of course, a faculty development program which was of a 2-year duration, which was run by NIFT for quite some time. But this got more, formalized into existing people using the faculty development center for continuous upgradation and for remedial classes for their knowledge gaps. This became a very major, initiative. In the case of NIFT, all the faculty members were recruited at the beginning, were exposed to the, to the foreign institutions right at the very beginning. I was one of them to be sent to FIT New York, and we were considered as not just students. We were considered as faculty members going there to audit classes. So when you audit classes, you are not necessarily supposed to write the exam. But it was up to the faculty members to really take the advantage of an institution and attend the entire courses and even write the exams so that you will know where you stand. I remember struggling in the computer classes initially because the computer was still a very distant matter in India. And in 1987-88, when we were being attached to the FIT New York, some of the softwares were really advanced, and the faculty member who was teaching in the course used to get very upset that one is not catching up with the kind of things which he was teaching. But however, I think the combination of courses which one was put to, more than that, as I'm always prone to saying, the city itself became the classroom. The New York City, the Big Apple, became the context in which FIT gave the courses to the auditing faculty members. So the Metropolitan Museum, MoMA, or to the various shops from Tiffany's to the Macy's, the entire row of shops which we used to walk around, and go down, to various villages. The villages where the small shops boutiques used to be prominent. All this helped us to know the kind of situation in the city. For example, there are cases where the visual merchandising. At that time, I remember in Macy's in 34th Street of 7th Avenue, the entire visual merchandising was of a new movie which came at that point in time of Dracula being relaunched. And all the merchandise, I remember the mannequins and the kind of t-shirts and the dresses which they brought out. So the connection between the Broadway theaters and the merchandise, and the new movies being released and the merchandise, and the retailing around in the retail districts in the east as well as in the west and the 7th Avenue and the 5th Avenue streets really became a major learning program, learning in itself. So many of the faculty members later were given much shorter, exposure to the US market, for example. But in my case, we were asked to even come back and spend some time in London, in UK, as well as in Paris, where in UK, for example, I was attached to Marks and Spencer, and I remember, going to the Harrods store, Harrods and the Marks and Spencer Marble Arch, and spending a lot of time in those stores to understand the merchandising system. Similarly, Printemps and Galeries Lafayette in Paris, one was attached to, and we had great exposure. So these kind of faculty development program where the fashion was new to India and we did not know the context in which fashion is developed and sold, because India was an exporting country, but most of the merchandisers in India were not allowed to travel abroad, and it was only the ownership or the owner's sons and daughters or owner himself used to go and visit the stores and the fairs, and the merchandiser had never seen how this merchandise is actually presented in a store and sold to a Old Navy or Gap customer or to diesel customer or whatever. So this connection which we could, we could get to was an important lesson when NIFT faculty was being developed. In the case of NID, there was also a UNDP program which was allotted to them, and a couple of the faculty members at that point had traveled. But what I did as director of the institute was to give enough opportunity to all faculty members to go to international fairs, international exhibitions, introduce student exchange programs, and make the faculty travel with the student to those institutions. I think this faculty development per se becomes an important constituent of an institute development, because they are the fulcrum, they are the backbone on which the institute revolves around. And if they are not updated and their knowledge gaps are beginning to show, then the institute cannot claim to be a contemporary modern institution. There is of course a downside to many of these things, because some of the faculty members are very resistant to change, and they simply become a burden on the institution's growth journey, because their own proclivities and their own ways of looking at things have become obsolete, and they are not willing to recognize nor reform, and they become a kind of an influence on the younger faculty who are joining, who get brainwashed. For example, in NID it was more or less an incestuous system in the beginning, because they wouldn't allow anybody other than an NID faculty recruiting another NID graduate. They almost put a ban on taking anybody from IIT, for example. So this all had this kind of structures which developed in an institute, not allowing open air to blow into the institution, and have a more broader recruitment policy of faculty members being recruited from different parts of the world, different institutions, almost harm the institution's culture, being very open, rather than that it became more and more inward looking. So this kind of things can happen if you are not able to really make those people identified at the right time, and if they are not given necessary inputs to develop, to self-question, to make necessary changes in their outlook. Otherwise it can really become gravity which pulls down an institution, and many a time it happens.